Hi, my name's Kim Bartholomew. I'm going to show you how to create a frame-based animation, a GIF file, to use on your HIMS websites to scroll through your sponsors. This is what our premier sponsors image looks like that we use on our Utah HIMS website. I just created this as a frame-based animation. It's saved as a GIF, an animated GIF, and then you add it to your page on your HIMS website using an image. It's just uploaded and placed on the page like another image, but an animated GIF has the capability of doing what's called frame-based animation. The tool that I used to create this animation is an open source tool that's freely available. It's a graphic software application called GIMP, and it's available for both PCs and Macs. I've only ever used the PC version, so you can go to gimp.org to download the most recent stable version of GIMP. I'm actually using the Windows 7 version, but it also has a Windows 8 or a server version or an XP version, plus Mac versions that are available also. So I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the process to create a frame-based animation. When you first launch GIMP, you'll notice that it has its panels in separate areas that you can move around. So the panels that I mostly use are the toolbox, and below the toolbox it has actually the toolbox options, and then we'll also be making use of the layers dialog, or the layers panel. Sometimes these movable panels will go on top of each other, or something might open behind another one of your panels. So if your layers panel ever gets hidden or closed, you can just go under the Windows menu and either open recently closed dialogs or open a dockable dialog, your layers or your toolbox options panels are usually the ones that you'll want to use. I created the size of my scrolling animation is 300 pixels wide by 300 pixels tall. You could do a different size for your animations. I'm actually scrolling five corporate sponsors in this example. I just redid this. Our previous example, I think, had four corporate sponsors scrolling. So the disadvantage of creating a frame-based animation is anytime you need to modify the corporate sponsors, you kind of have to go through this whole process again. So that's a disadvantage. This is a little bit of a cumbersome process, but I had some requests, so I'm going to go ahead and do this tutorial for you. When you work in GIMP, it has an intermediate file type called an XCF file that will actually preserve your layers. So you want to make sure that as you're creating your frame-based animation, before you start to merge your layers together, you'll want to save a version of all the separate layers in case you ever have to come back and swap out your corporate sponsors or modify the image. It's much easier to do it with this intermediate version that actually preserves your layers and doesn't compress and lose your layers. So it's a little bit like the PSD intermediate format in Photoshop, and especially with this frame-based animation, we absolutely want to be able to keep our layers. So I'm going to walk you through kind of the process that I use to build the individual pieces of the animation, and then I'll go through the process to merge down each page and then show you how to export your animation as an animated GIF where it replaces each page, kind of like the old-fashioned cartoon flip books that you get the animation by flipping through a book. The frame-based animation actually replaces each frame on a time, so then it looks like they're scrolling in between the frames that are being shown. So again, I used a 300 by 300 image that I first created, and we want to make sure to use layers, lots of layers. So I created my image with just a white background to start with. You could use a different color background if you wanted to. But because most of my corporate logos have some white in them, I thought I would put them on a white background. The next thing I wanted to show you is the border piece that I use for each of the frames of my animation. So you can kind of see in the animation I have some text at the top that says Premiere Sponsors, and notice there's kind of a blue border area. What I did is I created a layer that had this blue box with the text and then the really thin border, and in the middle of it is transparency. Um, and then I put this border on top of each of the pages that I'm going to create. Um, so let me show you how I made that. So here's an example of the border that I created. So what I did is I made a duplicate layer of my white background. And in GIMP, when you do a duplicate layer, it by default I just did a new layer. I didn't do a duplicate one. So I did a new layer and it just had a transparent background. This checkerboard area means that that's transparent. So I just did a new layer like this, and if you want you can call it border, and you want to make sure that it has a transparent background. And then what I did is I used this rectangular selection tool, and I drew a rectangle, a really thin rectangle here, just inside the edge of my shape here. And then I set my foreground color to be the color blue that I wanted for my border. And then under the select menu, under edit, I did a stroke on that rectangular area. I did a 2-pixel stroke. And again, if I wanted it to show, you want to make sure it's just inside so the border will show for you. Okay. And then I did, to have it stop selecting, you can say none. And then I did another rectangular area across the top. And then under edit, I filled with my foreground color to get my box. And then you can do the selection, an alphabet, the text tool. So you kind of draw yourself a rectangular area where you'd like that to go. And I just did Premiere Sponsors. And I don't know why that's not showing up very good. Maybe it's not big enough. That was because I had my tool set to blue instead of white. So now if I change that to be white, my Premiere Sponsor should show up. And then I'm going to go ahead and center that on my page. So you can choose whatever font you want. If you wanted, you could add a drop shadow behind that. That's what I did. I added a drop shadow. And again, I just don't know that my border is showing up the way I'd like. So I might do this border edge again to get my blue on the edge there. Oh, let me undo. I want to stroke that with the blue. And you could do a little bit wider border if you wanted to, than just the 2 pixels wide. Okay, so once you're kind of happy with the border, then you're going to reuse that, and again it's going to go on top of each of your groupings of your page. So we'll put our corporate sponsors below this layer and then a white, and then we'll group and merge each of those pages together. So that's kind of going to be our process. In the layers panel in GIMP, the layers work from the top down. So the layers at the top are shown on top of the layers below it, and to show or hide a layer, you can click this little eye shape to show or hide a different layer. So let me show you kind of the organization that will go into a single page, and then I'll show you how you can build the next part that will scroll kind of offset. So here's the border that I just built. And then what I'm going to do is bring in one of my corporate logos as its own layer and position that where I want to start it. And then I'll bring in another logo depending on how tall they are. I'm actually going to do my scrolling so that it scrolls going downward. But when I build it, I'm going to build it so they scroll going upward. So when we're done, the animation will actually start from my pages at the bottom, and it will actually scroll. You'll see them scrolling going downward, but we're going to build it as if they're going up off of the page. So here are two examples of two corporate logos plus my border that's on top. And then underneath it, I'm going to put my solid background layer will be in there. You'll probably want to name your different layers. So to name the layers, you can just click here to the side. And so any change that you make, so say I want this to be border 0, you need to hit enter, otherwise the change in the layer name won't get in there for you. So let me show you how you can bring in a new layer. What I did is for each of my corporate logos, I sized them kind of about the same width. I didn't want one to be more prominent than the other. So let me show you an example of one of the corporate logos. I'll just open this one. So here's one of my corporate logos. If the width of my scrolling box is 300, I sized my corporate logos to be about 250 pixels wide. So that's kind of how those work. So go ahead and size each of your corporate logos and save them as their own image. And then when you're ready to bring them in, you want to put them on their own layer. So I'm going to open as a layer. And I'm going to go ahead and choose one of my corporate logos, say this clear data one. Okay, so I'm going to undo that because I don't like that one. Let me try this one. Okay, so for some reason it's bringing it in showing a dark background, but so when you bring in your corporate logo, it will put the rest of the layer on a transparent layer. And then to position the corporate logos, I usually use my arrow keys to arrow them up and down. It brings them in centered, and I use the move tool. It kind of looks like an X. And then it has a property. You want to make sure that it's selected move the active layer. And then when I want to move the corporate logo to position it, I'll click on the layer that has it in it and then come over here and then use my arrow keys to arrow it up or down. And that way it keeps a consistent left or right. I'm just going to use my arrow keys rather than the mouse. If you accidentally move it left or right, when it animates, if it's offset the left or right, you can kind of tell by the eye that it doesn't look very nice. So that's how I bring in each of the corporate logos on their own layer. So what I do is I first of all build the positioning of the 2 or 3 logos that can fit within this 300 by 300 area. So I bring in the border on top. I have the border on top, and then underneath that I have one of my logos, and then another of my logos which I've positioned to be down below the first one. And then I put a white background underneath the border. So notice I still get my blue border here, and this white is down below. And then what I do is I make a duplicate of each of these 4. I'm showing all of them right here because I've already built this, but let me show you how I make a duplicate of these and then reposition them. So if you click on the border, you can choose the icon down here to duplicate the layer, or you can just right click and say duplicate layer. So this is where I would name it like border 1. So this is going to be a second border page, and I'm going to position that down below my white page. And then I'm going to copy my first logo. I'm going to duplicate the first logo. Again, at this time you should probably rename that layer. So I'm going to call it, it'll be my logo number 1, which I already have one called that, so I'm going to do space 1. So they have to be unique. I must already have one in there called that. So I'm going to move the copy down below my new border. And then I'm going to create a copy of my second logo, a duplicate layer. So I'm going to call that 1. And again, it's going to put a pound symbol in there. That's okay, because I already have one of those guys. And then I'm going to duplicate the white layer. Okay, so here are my 4 originals, and here are the 4 that I just duplicated. And this is how I reposition them. Again, there's lots of ways you could do this. So I'm going to hide the white in between for now. That's going to come into place when we merge these 4 onto their own page. But while I'm positioning that, this white layer will kind of get in the way. So what I do is I first show my first logo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the second copy of it to start moving up off of the page. So I'm going to hide the first logo, and I'm going to click on the second copy of that logo here, and then I'm going to use the move tool to and the arrow keys to start positioning that logo up off of the page. And then I'm going to hide my second logo, and then I'm going to come down and click on the layer that has the second logo here, and I'm going to use the move tool and start positioning that up off the page a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of what I do the first time. If you wanted to, you could start bringing in a third logo here. I'm going to wait and do that the second time through. So you can kind of see how that would work. So you can kind of see there's the new position for the logo, my 2 logos as they're moving up off the page. And then I go ahead and repeat that process. So I'll make copies of the second version of these, and then I'll move them a little bit more and add in a third copy of the logo. So let me show you an example of that here. So here's an example. Let me hide these. So here's an example where I've started to bring in the third logo. So I moved the top logo, I positioned it off more, moved the second logo, and started to bring in a third logo. And then I copied these and positioned them down below here. And then here's my next version of that, where the first logo will be completely off the page now. Oh, not yet. This is where the first logo will be completely off the page. And I've started to position my second logo moving off the page, and then I've added in a 4th logo down at the bottom. Okay, so here again is moving the logos. So I copy all those, and down below that I add, here my first logo is almost off, and then my second one. And then you want to work yourself back around to where your first logo is coming back on the page again. So here's an example of where the first logo is coming back on the page again, where I'm scrolling these off, moving them upward, and then I add back in the third logo, the first logo again. And then finally, when you're done, you're almost back to your starting point, but the logos are just down a little bit more from where they started. So this kind of is my starting. You can see the first logo is down a little bit and the very second one is a little bit off the page. And then eventually it will start back up again where you just have your first two logos on the page again. Okay, so again, show and hide. In between each grouping, you're going to have a border, the repositioning of your logos, and then a white background, a border, and then the positioning of the logos, and then a white background. So once you get all your layers at that point, you want to make sure you save this kind of intermediate step. I kind of called it my separate steps, where it has all my layers still separated. Again, you're going to save it as an XCF file so it preserves all these lovely layers. Don't be afraid to use naming on your layers to help you group the layers that belong together. These are all going to be part of the 10th page, part of the 9th page. These are all grouped together. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and I'll show you what it looks like when you start to merge those pages. Well, let me show you an example with that here. So what we're going to do now is group together all these layers into a single frame, a single page, or a single frame. So we're going to do a process called merging down, and let me hide all this stuff here so it's not. When you do merging down, you have to have your layers selected that you're going to merge together. And I like to start kind of from the top going downward. So I'm going to merge these 4 frames together. These 4 layers will become a single page with the border, my 2 logos, and the white background. So first I'm going to select the top, which is a border, and under the layer menu I'm going to say merge down. And you can see now, if I'm hiding these other things, you can see that it's merged my border with my first logo. And now I want to merge the second logo. So I'm going to click my layer that has the border and the first logo, and I want to merge that with my second layer, make sure it's showing. So then I'm going to come under layers and say merge down. And now it actually has as one layer the border, my first and second logo. And the last thing I want to do is I want to merge the white underneath there. So I'm going to go ahead and click my logo layer, and then I'm going to say merge down. So now it has the border, my first and second logo layer, and the white all merged into a single frame. And at this point you might want to just rename that page 1 or frame 0 or frame 1. Okay. And then I'm going to do it with my next grouping. I'm going to merge those into their own frame. So I'm going to start with the next border, so you can hide this if you want. Show the pieces that you're going to merge together. So I'm going to merge this border with these 2 logos and the white. You can see they're positioned a little bit differently now though. So start with the border, merge that down. Then I'm going to start with the border and the first logo and merge it to the second logo. And then finally start with all those merged down to the white. Okay, so this will become my frame 2. Frame 2 or page 2, whatever you want to call those. Okay, so that's kind of how I do my grouping. So the cool thing is you can now kind of see your animations happening. Here's my first page, and then you can see that's what it will look like. Again, when it does the animation, it starts at the bottom and goes up. So you can kind of see the scrolling starting to happen. So here will be my next one. I'm going to start with the next 4 images. I'm going to merge those together till I go to the white in between. So I'm going to start with the border and say merge down. And then the next one, I don't know that this is going to be the right positioning, but let me. Okay, so then that would be frame 3 or page 3, however you want to name these. Okay. So I don't have these in the right order here, but let me move that one down a bit. So when you've completed merging all of your pages, again, you're going to select a border, merge that down to your next animation. Onto your next logo. Until you've completed merging all your pages together. So when you get to that point, you want to go ahead and save that. Let's see. Okay, so here's a copy of my all of my pages that have been merged down together. This is I resaved it as the complete XCF that now has all the pages merged down together. So you can see if I kind of show and hide, you can kind of see the order of these pages. So here's my animation as it would happen by showing and hiding my layers. But actually it's going to do it from the bottom coming up. Okay, so I've merged down into the different pages all of the different shifting of my corporate layers, my logos with on top of each of these pages. I started with the border, then my logos, and then had the white underneath and merged those. Then we're going to go ahead and create the frame-based animation. If you want to just run it quickly, you can go under filters and then animation. This actually runs it pretty fast, faster than it would actually show up for when we actually create it. But you kind of get an idea here of what it will look like. So you can go ahead and play your animation. You could also step through one of your pages at a time. You can kind of see how it's swapping out each of those frames. I actually have 11 pages that that it's going to swap between. Okay, so you can test the order of your pages that you're happy with the order. You can undo or try it again if you're not happy with it. We want to finally export. So I have a little bit older version of GIMP. So mine says save as, but yours will probably say export or export to. So again, you want to save the page version of this probably as I called mine complete, where my pages have been merged down and are complete. So again, I saved the separate one where all the layers are still separate in case I have to come back in and change, which I know I will, change my corporate logos. So to export this as an animated GIF that can be shown on the web, I go under File, and mine says Save As, but yours will probably say Export or Export To. So I want to save it actually as a GIF, a GIF. Yours will probably give you a choice. So I'm going to call mine version 3 because I already have an example of that. So a dialog will come up. You want to make sure you select to save it as an animation, and then I'm going to choose export. And then because I have parts of my image as I was positioning them, they're actually outside the frame of my page. I'm going to crop all of those extra pieces that are on there. We want to actually use the frame disposal rate that's 1 frame per layer. We want to do this replacement where it actually swaps out each of our pages, kind of like on that cartoon flip book. I want to loop it forever, my animation, rather than just doing it one time. And I found that 800 milliseconds kind of gave me a nice timing of my animation. You could do more or less than that. Again, you can resave it and try a different timing for your scrolling box. I just found the 800 worked good for me. And then I'm going to check to use this delay for all of the frame, this same delay. I'm not going to have it go slower or faster. I'm going to use that same delay for all my frames. And then I'm going to go ahead and save my file as a GIF. Okay, so then to view your page, to view your animation on your page, just go ahead and open up that GIF file in a browser, and then see if you're happy with the rate of the animation that's going to happen, and also the direction of your pages. It's actually starting at the bottom of my list and animating going up this way. So my pages, actually I moved my images going up off the page. Well, it's animating actually moving them going down the page. So kind of interesting, the order. It doesn't do it in the same order. So just make sure you're happy with your final animation. The last thing I'm going to go ahead and show you is how I added this then to one of my pages on our UHIMSS website. Well, it looks like I'm not able to launch that website while I'm doing this recording, but let me just kind of talk you through the process. So again, this GIF file that you generate, that you save as your final exported file, you add it to your HIMSS webpage just like any other image. So you'd use the little image icon when you want to add it to a page, and you can position the image on the page. It has a width and height. Again, it's 300 by 300. Just when you view it in the browser, it has that animated frame-based behavior, but you add it to your page just like any other image. So we chose to put this scrolling sponsor box on our homepage, and I wrapped some of the text on our homepage around it. And I've had to recreate this twice. Last year we just had 4 sponsors, and this year we have 5 premier sponsors. So I had to recreate this image. I just made it the same size. So good luck, and hope this tutorial helps you. Again, I just have done the frame-based animation using GIMP, but you could also use Adobe's Fireworks, and I just haven't done it in, I don't know if Photoshop has this frame-based capability or not. So hope this process is helpful to you, and good luck.